I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was 10 years old. The first memory I have of obsessive compulsive disorder dates back to middle school. I remember at the time, I think it was February to be exact, there was a stomach flu going around. My brothers actually got it, so it was in my house. I was absolutely petrified of getting the stomach flu. I was like, I cannot get the stomach flu. Like, the stomach flu was literally just like the scariest thing to me as a 10-year-old. This idea popped up in my head that if I started saying certain words that I wouldn't get the stomach flu. And I know what you're thinking. It sounds irrational. So I came up with this idea that if I said these 4 words that I wouldn't get the stomach flu. And these 4 words were it, one, it, no. Let me explain to you the reasoning behind these words. It was it because it was a meaningless word. 1 because I only wanted the stomach flu once if I got it. It because it was a meaningless word, and no because no, I didn't want the stomach flu. I started saying those words when I did anything. When I turned off the remote, I would have to say those words. When I touched a door, I would have to say those words. When I looked at something, I would have to say those words. I also started washing my hands, not for the purpose of germs necessarily, but because of my obsessive thought. I thought that I had to wash my hands when I had obsessive thoughts. So you guys understand, my obsession was getting the stomach flu, and my compulsion was saying these words and washing my hands. And that's how my OCD started. Now, I went back to school that next week, and I thought that I would be able to go back to school and not do these things. I got to school that morning, and I sat down in my first period of class, I remember, and I grabbed my pencil and I immediately said those words out loud. And I was like, I cannot say these words. People are going to think I am insane. Like, oh my goodness, I cannot do this in public. This is just embarrassing. I remember getting through class and then leaving the class and touching the door and opening the doorknob in the classroom to get out of class, and I had to say the words again. And I was like, why can't I stop? It wasn't that like I couldn't not say them. It was that I truly felt like if I didn't say these words, I was going to get the stomach flu. And to me, the absolute worst thing that could happen was getting the stomach flu, and it was worth it to me to say these words so I didn't get the stomach flu. That's the first memory I have with OCD. From there, my obsessions just grew. Now, from this point on, I don't feel comfortable talking about my obsessions. It's just not something I can talk about yet. It's not something I'm comfortable talking about, but I can talk about the compulsions to you guys. It became that when I left my house, I would have to unplug everything and turn off all the lights. And as a 10-year-old, you know, that's like your parents' job to unplug everything. But to me, my mom doing it wasn't enough. Like, I had to check myself, but I couldn't just check once. I would have to check 4 times, but then it would turn into I wasn't doing it right, so I would have to check it 8 times. But then I messed up, so I'd have to check it another 8 times. And I became obsessed with numbers, so I would always have to do things in 4s and 8s and even numbers. I could not do anything in odd numbers. And there's certain even numbers that I don't like. Like, I don't like the number 6. I don't really like the number 2. 2 plus 4 equals 6, so I can't do 2s and 4s. And I know this all sounds super rational and crazy if you're watching this and you don't have OCD, but this is just the reality of somebody that lives with OCD. This is the way that my brain is. OCD is a chemical imbalance. There is proof that people with OCD's brains are different than people without OCD, and you can't help the way that your brain thinks. It became very apparent to everybody what was going on because you can't really hide that as, you know, a 10, 11-year-old. It's not an easy thing to hide, and you'll find if you live in close proximity with a person that has OCD, it's very easy to see them compulsing because they can't really hide their rituals. And clearly, I was struggling with something. So my parents took me to a child psychologist that specialized in OCD. I went to her for a while, and she wanted to put me on medicines, but a lot of you guys don't know this. I grew up with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So I went through a lot of health issues as a kid, and sometimes I wonder if my OCD was onset by the stress of that. But then again, there's no way of knowing. I was already on like a ton of medications for my JRA, and my parents weren't comfortable on putting me on medications for my OCD at the time. This child therapist helped me deal with it in a more natural way. So my JRA went into remission when I was 17. I noticed my OCD would flare up when I was really sick. So I just kind of associated it with something that when I felt really sick with my JRA, my OCD would everything was really good. I was feeling great. And OCD was always something that was in the back of my mind no matter what, and I always had compulsions, but I just kind of accepted that they were something that was always there and I had to deal with it, and it was just kind of my normal. Like, I didn't know there was any other way to live, I guess. I don't remember never not having OCD. I don't remember having that relief from obsessing. So fast forward to 2 summers ago, I think it was. The summer of my 19th year. I got an apartment. I moved to downtown LA. I got my own apartment, and things just kind of hit the fan while I was there. I went from having this really amazing year where I was really happy to all of a sudden my OCD just started coming back that summer. It started taking over my entire life. I started compulsing almost overnight, it felt like. Mind you, I was living alone, so I didn't have a roommate, I didn't have my parents, nobody really saw me compulsing and nobody really knew the extent of it. There was a lot of stress in my family at the time for other reasons, and for whatever reason I just felt like it wasn't the right time to like speak up about my own issues. I was like, okay, I can handle it. I've always handled it. Which was where I went wrong. I don't regret anything, but I do feel like I needed help sooner than I got it. I started obsessing about everything, basically. And there was nothing that didn't bother me anymore. First, it just started with my normal checking, where I had to, when I left my apartment, I would have to make sure all the lights were off. I had to make sure everything was unplugged, no matter what. Like, even if it was a lamp, I had to unplug it. I would have to unplug my toaster. I would have to unplug everything. That wasn't enough. I would have to come in and come out and check my apartment 4 times before I left. But then I would be like, maybe I didn't actually unplug something. Maybe there's something still checked, and I would keep checking, and I would just be convinced that I like forgot something, so I would check it over and over again, and that's how it started. Then it turned into, I live in LA and there's a lot of germs here, so then germophobia OCD started, where I had to wash my hands all the time. But then I was too freaked out of my own germs. Then I got freaked out to touch things. I know what you're thinking, like, how are you freaked out to touch things? But I would get freaked out to touch things because I would be like, well, maybe there's a germ on it because I bought it at a store and maybe there's germs on it. Or maybe it's just been sitting there for a while and I don't know what germs are on it anymore, so I can't touch it. So my apartment just became a mess overnight. Then it turned to my clothes. I couldn't wear my clothes anymore because my clothing was the wrong color and I associated the color with a bad memory. I wouldn't be able to wear it because of the patterns. The patterns would freak me out. Then it turned into food. I couldn't eat food anymore. There were only 4 restaurants that I could eat from anymore. I get a lot of jokes in my personal life that I'm like a mess and that like I always like go to the same restaurants and stuff, which they're all lighthearted, which I don't mind because like they're all lighthearted, I know, and like a lot of people aren't educated on this disorder, but what people don't realize is that a lot of it, if not all of it, stems from my OCD, and it's not something I really like can choose. So I stopped eating and I lost about 20 pounds. At my skinniest, I weighed 104. Then I was dealing with being borderline anorexic. All of this led me into depression. So it was kind of like a spiral effect. I was dealing with OCD, then I was dealing with being borderline anorexic. Then I was on the scale. I was on the scale for being anorexic, but I'm not going to sit here and say I was. If I had lost 1 more pound, I wasn't going to be allowed into my treatment program. I would have to go to an eating disorder program before they would let me into my treatment program. And I was dealing with depression at the time because I was so depressed because I felt like I couldn't do anything anymore. Every last thing in my life was affected by this OCD. I couldn't even look at something, like let's say like I'm looking at the wall right now. If I looked at a wall, I would go like this, like over and over again, because I wasn't looking at it right. People don't understand how disabling and serious OCD is, and it's kind of made to be a joke, and like I understand people aren't educated and it's fine, but OCD literally almost took my life. And I don't think people understand that, how serious it was. I felt like everything had fallen apart and that I just wasn't functioning and I couldn't be a functioning person. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. At that point, I reached out for help because I realized my disorder was bigger than me. It was bigger than something I could fix by myself. It wasn't something that I was gonna be able to fight off by myself this time. It was something that I truly had to get intense professional help for. I had to move out of my apartment because I couldn't live by myself anymore because, I was too freaked out to live by myself anymore, but I was also high risk for suicide, so I had to live with family at that point. Yeah, it really sucked. It literally felt like at 20 years old, my entire world had fallen apart. When you deal with a mental disorder, you know how scary it is, because it's so scary because it's all you can think about. It consumes your every thought, and I don't think people understand sometimes how scary and how horrible it is to live with a mental disorder, or else they wouldn't make many jokes. OCD is one of the top 10 disabling disorders that somebody can live with, and I think that's interesting because it's a mental disorder. Another fact of the matter is that people don't treat OCD as seriously as it should be treated. I guess, how did I get help, right? My parents and I realized that this was something I needed intense treatment for. So my parents and I looked into OCD treatment centers. It's similar to going to rehab. So you basically go somewhere and you get treated every single day. So we looked into residential. I was really scared to go to a residential program just because I'm 20 years old. I was like, I just don't know how I feel about being away from my parents. My parents are like everything. They're my support system. And I was just like, I don't really know how I feel about that. So I found a outpatient program in Los Angeles County. It was actually one of the top programs for OCD. So I was like, sign me up It's not that easy though. There was a 6-month wait list that I had to go on. So I had to be on a 6-month wait list before I could get treatment. And that's why I say it's better to get treatment sooner than later, because there usually is a wait list for these programs. I found a therapist that was actually part of the program that did a private practice, and she agreed to see me. So I started going to therapy twice a week, and we started doing exposure response therapy, which is basically where you have to expose yourself to the obsession. So let's say my obsession was getting the stomach flu, and I had to wash my hands every single day because I was scared of getting the stomach flu. Then the exposure would be that I wouldn't be able to wash my hands at all, or I'd be able to wash my hands once a day. Right now I know we're all probably like washing our hands, but that's the thing. I started doing exposure response therapy twice a week. I did my program. It was a 6-week program, and it honestly changed my life. I credit the people there. The people there saved my life. And I know that might sound dramatic, but if you were a part of the situation, it's anything but dramatic. Those people gave me hope about having life with OCD. The other patients there that had OCD, it was the first time that I ever in my life met other people with OCD, and I met people that totally got what I was going through. I still talk to them to this day. The doctors there were so positive and encouraging and knowledgeable. You know, I know everybody has different experiences with outpatient treatment and like rehab centers and like treatment centers or whatever, but I had a very positive experience, and I can only speak about my experience, and my experience was positive. And I have a video about a day in the life of a mental hospital if you want to know more about day to day what we did there. If you had told me a year ago I would be as functional as I am right now, I would not have believed you. I just want you guys to know that it does get better. Take it from me, I did not think it I didn't think it did. I thought it was bullshit when people said that, but it does get better. And if I can encourage you to do anything, it's just to reach out to people and to tell people you're struggling and to not do it alone. Having the support of people was the biggest thing that I had. It's everything. There's hotlines that you can call. There's hotlines specific to what you're dealing with. I've been struggling a lot, to be honest with you guys, with the whole coronavirus thing. Because it causes a lot of stress, and when I'm under a lot of stress, my OCD kind of acts up. But you know, it's something that I've learned to manage, and I have a support system, and I've realized that. You can all in the comment section be a support system for each other. I try really hard to respond to as many of you guys as I can, but in the comments we can all support each other too. I just want you guys to know that you're not alone. There are so many people in the world that deal with this disorder, and there's such a stigma around this disorder, which is why I even feel kind of weird talking about it, which I shouldn't, because it's a really common disorder. If there's one thing I want you guys to know is that you're not alone, and I'm always rooting for you. I hope that my story helps one of you guys. Like, please reach out for treatment if you need it. But yeah, anyways, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and bye guys.